Good day, everybody. I'm Sam Shihab with the law firm of Shihab Burke, and absent from today's presentation is my dear friend and partner, Mr. Brian Burke. He is out on vacation today, and I will be filling in. And no one can speak and talk as quick and think as quick as Brian, so I will miss him, and you guys will miss him. But we'll do the best we can to bridge today's presentation into next week, where I expect him to be back. Today's topic is the fiscal year 2025 October Visa Bulletin, uh, which was released a few days ago and has the full complement of the visa availability for the next year. The October Visa Bulletin is an important Visa Bulletin, is an important release because it's the beginning of the fiscal year. With it carries approximately 226,000 green cards available for family immigration and 140,000 green cards for employment immigration that will be allocated based on complex rules and available cases in the pipeline versus cases that have been filed. The formula is so complex, Congress has made it so difficult that probably the State Department that releases the Visa Bulletin, in cooperation with the Department of Homeland Security, they do the best they can every month. They release the numbers, and we all scratch our head and say, how in the heck they came out with these numbers? We don't understand it. They don't understand it either. And if you're here listening to me, you probably have already looked at the Visa Bulletin. You're probably familiar with it. You probably listened to other people who have provided projections on the Visa Bulletin, and there is one thing in common among all of us that project these numbers. We don't know what we're talking about because no one knows what they're talking about. If you project these numbers, you're going to be 50% correct, 50% incorrect. And that's the case. You will hear people say, boy, I was right here, and boy, I was wrong here. And you know why? Because nobody can project these numbers. Nobody can predict these numbers. There are formulas, there are assumptions, and you can go through it time and time again. And um, and you will find out that there's really no way to calculate these numbers. Um, in my conversations with my partners here in the office, and they're all smart people and have a great opinion. One of my partners tells me that the Visa Bulletin is nothing but a political statement. Um, is nothing but a political statement. If they want to move the numbers forward, they will move the numbers forward. If they don't want to move the numbers forward, they will not do that. Forget about the numbers, forget about the calculations. And it's probably right. Before we go into the analysis and the discussion on that, and my opinion on it, and what other people's opinion, I'll take a moment to go over the numbers quickly. Um, and I'm going to do it in a way that is not going to bore everybody. I'm going to show a spreadsheet just for those who wants to talk about family immigration, and family immigration is wonderful. Let me flush this out first and quickly. There has been positive movement in the family immigration. In my opinion, not in the categories that really count the most. Honestly, I have tremendous respect for people who are trying to bring their brothers and sisters or their adult children or married children to the US. But for me, these categories, and they are in the categories here, and they have their own uh, uh, classification. The one that really I think most important is for permanent residents. You're residing in the United States. Are you able to bring your wife here? Are you able to bring your children here? If these categories are backed up, back, backlogged, Nothing else matters. And the October Visa Bulletin miserably fails in these two categories. There is no significant movement whatsoever. There is some movement in Mexico for a spouse petition of a month, I think, or so. But other than that, the F2A category is backlogged to 2021, 3 years, if you are a permanent resident who got married to a foreign national and you would like to bring your wife. You have to wait, live apart for 3 or 4 years. It's more miserable, and there's no movement in the children of permanent resident. These are not adults. These are under 21 children who, for one reason or another, did not come in with the parent. And if you are a U.S. permanent resident and would like to apply for your child, the date is 2016 for China and India and uh, rest of the world, and furthermore backlogged from Mexico to 2005. I mean, it's almost comical. You have to be under 21, and the wait is almost 19 years from Mexico. I don't even know why there is a date there. So on the family base, I know there's movement and people are saying great things. That hey, it's moving forward, not in the categories that count. I'm sorry, not in the spouse of a permanent resident, and not in the child of a permanent resident. They have not moved, and therefore, or significantly moved, and therefore, um, October Visa Bolden thumbs down on any meaningful, relevant improvement in the quality of life of the U.S. permanent resident. Obviously, if you're a U.S. citizen, you want to bring your child, it's unlimited, relatively unlimited. So you are not in a classification, you don't wait. Or if you want to bring your spouse as a U.S. citizen, there's no backlog, you don't wait. But if you're a permanent resident, you're subject to the numerical limitations and you do wait. Um, um, there has been some improvement in the EB5 India for the general category, and that's wonderful, but it's still backlogged. Um, I'm turning my attention on the EB1, EB2, and EB3 for a moment, where I think a lot of our listeners are interested to hear about. And let me see if I can share my spreadsheet here with you. Um, and basically, let's look at final action date first. And the final action date, I will not spend a lot of time reading the September or the October Visa Bulletin to you. You have those. But this spreadsheet represents the difference in number of days between the two categories. The notable retrogression is China, third preference, where they were penalized 153 days on day one of the October Visa Bulletin. Offsetting that penalty, there is a massive forward movement in the third preference, rest of the world, of 714 days. If you can see it right here. Um, Very peculiar to me, this penalty. I don't know what is going on here. Uh, but again, these are final action dates. These are the dates where visas are available. Now, these dates don't typically move aggressively one way or the other. At the beginning of the year, they move throughout the year. It's the dates for filing that is moved a little bit more prospectively because it's kind of a little bit of an outlook into what the year is going to look like. So on the final action date, really there isn't nothing going on except for a massive penalty for EB3 China, and a definitely, I just don't get it. I mean, somebody just woke up one day and say, "Hey, we're going to move this about 2 years, a little bit less than 2 years for rest of the world EB3." Maybe there is that much, numbers that we got in that they think on day one they would like to move it. Um, to that kind of a forward movement, unless they've discovered an error in the prior calculation. So it is what it is. The rest of the numbers are zero or mediocre. There's no really significant movement. 10-day movement here, 21-day movement there, 0-day here. As you can see, the chart, there isn't really a whole lot of movement to contend with the exception of other workers in the Philippines. They moved to 214 days. That's another peculiar one because the whole entire other workers limited to 10,000 green cards to move it. That much is, I don't get it, but whatever. Um, but there's really no significant movement in the final action date for the October Visa Bulletin. The moving on to the dates for filing, and these are the dates for September and October, and I will not be wasting your time discussing them, except again to talk about what movement we have seen, and there has been some aggressive forward movement and aggressive backward movement. Again, China EB3 was penalized 228 days on the dates for filing. So that's a aggressive backward movement for China. India moved forward for the second and the third preference, 163 days for the second preference, 219 days for the third preference. Again, I keep seeing these whoops, my formulas are showing, and we don't want to show formulas. These 219-day forward movement for third preference India. Again, it's peculiar for me because these days there's no cross flow, there's no nothing. These numbers are EB3, solid EB3 numbers for India. It looks like there is, capacity. India now, EB3 is June 8th, 2013, which has moved from, let's see here, November 1st, 2012. So that's a strong forward movement of 219 days. There is decent movement both in India, China, uh, and some good movement in rest of the world in EB2. Not as much as EB3. EB3 had significant backward movement and a significant forward movement. In any event, we have about 5-6 months movement, whatever the math, 7 months movement, whatever that calculates for India. Little movement in the EB1 for anybody, um, which is, again, it's peculiar because we have current all chargeability. So we think that unused visas in the rest of the world goes to EB1 India, but we do not see a significant movement there. And again, I'm not going to even start to speculate. It could be that the number of applications coming through for EB1 India is very strong, such that there is no need to move the date forward, or there is a lot of people jumping from EB2 to EB1 with older priority date, and therefore forward movement is not justified. You can speculate as much as you want. We really do not know how these numbers are calculated. We have no idea. Uh, to I mean, again, for me, the 6 months minus or plus movement for India, EB2 and EB3, some forward movement for China in EB2, significant penalty for China in EB3, both in the final action date and the dates for filing, tells me that nobody can predict this. I don't think anybody can really figure out what these numbers are coming from and where they're heading. And unless Congress passes some laws that can change how these numbers are calculated. This is the system we have, folks. Um, um, when you have an H-1B visa cap that receives 400,000 application competing over 85,000 available spots, why Congress feels the urgency to move? There are more people want to come in here that we can accommodate. So why do you think they are going to feel the urgency to change the rules when our US colleges and universities are 100% occupied? I think 80 or 90% of the graduate engineering program is from foreign nationals. And these universities are collecting all these out of state tuition and overseas tuition at a wonderful rate. Why Congress has to do anything? Why would anybody need to change the rules to provide the relief for a system that's broke? We need something that similar, a crisis similar to the Y2K crisis, maybe an AI crisis of some sort. I don't know. I'm not wishing on a crisis, but this is what seems to have moved Congress before. In 1999, they moved the H-1B number to 119. I'm reading my notes here to the right, to 115,000 H-1Bs, and then moved them up in 2001 through 2003 to 195,000 H-1Bs. And I think back then it was only 65,000. So they tripled that number because they were worried about the Y2K bug. And that moved Congress. Congress acted in a minute. There was no problem. President signed it into law. I don't know, what do we need to do for Congress to um, to change the rules, make it um, reasonable. I want to look at this again. Honestly, I want to go back and look at this one more time to kind of reflect. I mean, let's see here. What the heck? Um, so right now, final action dates. 2012, 12 years ago. We got a green card for you. You've been here for 12 years. We got a green card for you. Are you kidding me? This is nuts. The expectation of having to wait in a system that is absolutely makes no sense. Allocating 7% of the visas to a country that amounts to 1/3 of the world only gets 7% of the visas. That makes no sense whatsoever. I don't get it. Um, so that's my visa bulletin, October visa bulletin take, and um, there's zero predictability. And I think the conversation I have here in the office with my partners, one of my partners telling me it's totally political. Don't even tell me they calculate numbers. Yeah, they calculate numbers, but when they calculate numbers, there's going to be 20 assumptions made. These assumptions are going to go all to the left, all to the right, based on the political attitude that they have. When we had a prior administration at the Department of State, they were moving these numbers a lot more aggressively, but also they were retrogressing them more aggressively. Now they seem to be maybe no interest in moving them forward because they have no interest in being criticized and moving them backward. I think moving them forward aggressively and dealing with the numbers later is a lot better, because if you file your adjustment of status Now, under the dates for filing, the Child Status Protection Act kicks in if you file the adjustment of status under the dates for filing, which protects children from aging out. And that's something that's really needed when you're dealing with a 12-year backlog for India. It's something that will makes a huge difference. Now, on the upside, I guess, and I should mention that you have the Department of Homeland Security saying we are taking adjustment status based on dates for filing. Yeah, that's great news. So dates for filing is are allows for earlier filing than there are visas available, and that is important because it, like I said, it locks children under the Child Status Protection Act from aging out, as we are waiting a whole decade to get these green cards. Um, so taking questions, and I should remind you guys that we answer the questions based on very limited information. So while we're going to do the best we can to give you the best answer possible, we don't have the background, we don't have the whole background, and therefore we would like to remind you not to rely on what we tell you. And if you feel that we've told you something that's really critical and important, go seek an advice of an attorney, an immigration attorney, uh, whom you trust, that can advise you and guide you in your case to make a smart decision before you sell a house or resign your job or do something crazy. Consult with an attorney. And obviously, there's no attorney-client uh, relationship established because we're talking here through whatever medium we are talking through, because obviously we do not know who you are, we do not know all the facts. Um, I am going to try to do this, and I am not an expert in managing the platform, but let's do the best we can here. So I have a gentleman here, Ahan Heart Warrior. Sam and Brian, I will deliver to Brian when he comes in. Thanks as always for doing this. I have an EB2 with priority date of 2013, approved in 2015. And also I have an EB3 I-140 approved with the same priority date. In 2021 when EB3 was ahead. Continuing on. Then in 2022, my employer also filed Supplement J to get me back to EB2 as that went ahead, and that is also pending. All right. I am expecting to be current in EB3 in the next 12 months, 18 months. Will USCIS consider me in EB2 or EB3? All right. So I also have an EB3 approved at the same time, prior to date. So he has an I-140. Then what he's done after that, um, he filed a supplement J to get me back to EB2 as they went ahead. That is also pending. So it seems to me the last action you've done is you're telling USCIS consider my adjustment of status in EB2, and um, by doing that, you have told them that. Now, you could, when EB3 becomes current, if it becomes current as you're expecting, you could file and ask him to move back to EB3. Now, normally, if you're doing a transfer underlying basis, normally they don't want you to do more than one or transfer. But in employment-based cases, the indication from USCIS is that they will accommodate more than one change. So what you need to do is wait until you know which one is current, and then when it's current, do a transfer underlying basis to that one and ask USCIS to move forward on your case. So you need to be proactive in the way you handle your case at the time the correct classification becomes current, and you can file for transfer underlying basis at that time. Again, to confirm that this is the one that you want to move forward and follow through with them. All right, so I have a second question here from XYZ. Boy, 1 of 5. I'm going to try to fly through this. This is a little bit too elaborate for our presentation here, but in the interest of not boring everybody, let's fly through this. And if it's too complicated, maybe we'll come back to it XYZ, because honestly, that's a lot of 1 of 5 is a little too much for me. But I am EB3 rest of the world with priority date of March 2023. I'm thinking of using AC1 to find a new job, but unfortunately, I will miss out on date of filing in October Visa Bulletin by 10 years. All right. Because the date of filing for the whole of fiscal year 24 was February 1st, 2023, it's fair to say that USA's already has in their inventory most, if not all, the I-45 for EV3 rest of the world with priority date February 2023 with any inventory data. Okay. The fact that they only move to date of filing by 1 month in March of 23 tells me that after extrapolating 1 month out, they realized that 1 month movement should use up all available visas for fiscal year 2025. All right. They won't move the date of filing again. Is that fair analysis, or do you think they are little conservative after moving the date too aggressively in 2024, and there is a chance the date of filing will move a little in January Visa Bulletin? I just need to move by 10 days. Thanks and sorry for the long question. So will the date, I mean, the bottom line is the question is, I am off by 10 days for the date of filing. Uh, will they the move the date of filing by 10 days? And would I be able to file my case, or am I stuck for until next year? The date of filing can move, absolutely. It is not a rigid date, but although it is common knowledge that the October Visa Bulletin gives you the most optimistic date for filing for the fiscal year, but these numbers are all sausage. It's making sausage. There's really no hard and fast rule. Um, yeah, they can absolutely move the date of filing forward by 10 days. Um, and it could be done by January, absolutely. I would not rule that out. You can make all the calculations you want, and I know how frustrating this process for you, but the visibility and the predictability for the Visa Bulletin, it's like walking in fog. You think you see things, but when you get there, it's not there. So it's very difficult to predict. All right, moving into Sai Mayapan. Hi there. Any prediction on the July 2014 India based on the latest visa application inventory? Well, um, I mean, think about it. So if we look at what um, what we have seen in terms of dates for filing, and I will put that back in there. Um, uh, so the USCIS is telling us that EB2, EB2, India will move for the year slightly less than 6 months, 163 days. That's basically what we are being told by this October Visa Bulletin when comparing it to the September in terms of an outlook for the year. Right now, the October Visa Bulletin for EB2 India is January 1st, 2013. To me, the January 1st, 2013 on a straight line projection is approximately 363 days, plus or minus. So to me, to get back to middle of 2014, you're looking at more than 2 years, in my humble estimation. I don't see any other way of projecting it. We have absolutely no other way except to look at it that way. This could be absolutely wrong information, inaccurate information, but we have no other visibility. Not only do we not have any other visibility, but also, I mean, obviously, it's going to also depend on how many people transfer from EB2 to EB3 because it's moving faster. Right now, EB3 India is June of 2013 for date for filing. And final action date, let's see here. Final action date is about 6 months ahead, November 2012 for India, as opposed to July of 2012. So if you have a bunch of people moving um, that have a priority date after yours, which I don't see why would they move now until they see things developing a little bit more, um, then maybe there's a better answer. But right now, I'm looking at 3 years or so in my estimation. Why hurry? Hello, Shihab. Hello, sir. How are you? We will miss him dearly. Indeed, we'll miss Brian Berg dearly. I do miss him already. All right. Sonu Sharma. When will India EB3 2013 be current for final action date? Again, I will be looking at what they have given us, and I will give you the way I look at things. So, final action date, they have told us that EB3 this year is, they have a pipeline of 219 days. That sounds like to me like 7 months approximately. Right now, India EB3 is June of 2013. Um, so when you say when will India EB3 2013 be current for final action date, I'm assuming you're talking about January 2013. And I would say um, you're looking at it will be probably by the end of the year, sometime in June, by the end of this fiscal year. So if your date is earlier than June 2013, you should hope that this year you will get your green card. If your priority date is after June 2013, you may not. All right. Um, Taking question from Um, Ugonzo Mali. Hi, Sam. How long does it take to get an employment-based I-485 to get approved? What does it depend on? Okay, so that's an excellent general question. And the answer to that question is obviously we have a dual system of backlog, not one, two systems, government backlog and visa availability backlog. So based on the visa allocation, which is published by the Visa Bulletin, we have to know what category you're in and what's the backlog, what's the visa backlog for your country of origin and your classification, whether you're an EB1, EB2, EB3, EB4, and EB5. And based on that, there's that system of backlog that we have, which will range from absolutely available. For example, if we're looking at final action date, if you are in the EB1 category, rest of the world, it's available. But if you're in EB2, rest of the world, it is March of 2003, which is a little over 1 year and 6 months of being backlogged and so forth and so on. So you got that delay, which is basically I'm standing in line. There's no visa available until there's a visa available based on the date I filed my application, my I-140 application. So there's that backlog, which is called visa availability as published by the Visa Bulletin. Then you have the second backlog, which is processing backlog. The government takes time to process the paperwork, even if there's a zero delay in your application. So zero delay in your application equals about a year and a half of paperwork processing by the government. And therefore, um, putting those two together, you'll have a picture of how long it takes to get approved for an I-45 and what does it depend on. I hope that answers the question in a simplistic way. Uh, Duran, one of two. I am adjusting my status through employment based immigration EB3, and I am originally from Turkey. My priority date is April of 2024. So we all know that Turkey is part of the rest of the world. And the final action date for EB3 rest of the world today is November 15, 2022. As of the October Visa Bulletin published date, and the filing date is for the rest of the world for EB3 is March of 1st, 2023. Okay. Uh, Part 2. Do you have any prediction on insight on when my priority date might become current for filing based on recent trends? Um, all right. So EB3 dates for filing. If your case is with priority date earlier than March 23rd, March 1st, 2023, you're ready to file. Our friend's priority date is April 24, a year later. Okay, a year after the government told us in this October Visa Bulletin that there is a visa available. Now, how can we predict forward? We have no information except what they give us. And uh, prediction models, calculation models, all these prove to be nothing. Ineffective. Is basically a shot in the dark. The only thing we have that is clearly published is the dates for filing forward movement that they've given us for the rest of the world. And the dates for filing forward movement was very little. By the way, for EB3 was only 28 days. Now the final action date moved 714 days, so they felt that there's visa availability aggressively all the way to um, November 15, 2022. They moved it very well, but in terms of dates for filing, they said that really there is not a whole lot of movement there. So meaning that I don't see how this year we will see much improvement from the 11/15/2022 date that you got there that they've published for EB3 rest of the world. You being in 2024, now I have to take note of the very aggressive forward movement of 714 days in October. But to me, when you have that much strong forward movement, typically things move slow after that. It doesn't move 714 days this year and 714 days next year. It's just, I haven't seen it that way. So I am skeptical that your visa will be available anytime soon. And also would say that I am skeptical that this year I don't see how you will be in position to file your case yet, Mr. Duran. I would say let's look at the Visa Bulletin October for fiscal year 2026. Let's look at what they've done there. Let's look at their prediction at that time, and then take a fresh look on trying to figure out what's going to be coming down the pipeline. But I don't see it this year. Perhaps next year or the year after. I'm hoping next year. It would be my hope. All right. Um, Moving forward from Mr. Duran, and I think I have to see here. All right, so I think I got Kumar Amit next on my list to answer. Should we give up the green card dream? India, January 2016. Well, Amit, you have been waiting for 8 years now. January 2016. Now it's 2024, and the movement is very slow. Um, the only thing I can say is there was a time when I went back and looked at how long it takes to get a green card for Indian born nationals. And I'm assuming you're an Indian born national, Indian January 2016. You gave that to me. I have found that in the last 20 years, with all the ups and downs, it averaged somewhere between 12 to 15 years. It didn't change consistently. Now, the projections and the math, they're saying you're going to get your green card in 400 years or 250 years and all that. You know, I'm not going to take an issue with the modeling, the mathematical modeling that people are putting together. Right now, on the upside, um, there is incredible progress. Uh, um, Americans of Indian descent are making at every front in this country's political system and in this country's uh, business and economic system. These big players, I mean, I don't care who it is that you're talking about. I mean, there are going to be somebody in the White House next year with Indian descent. I don't care which ticket you go to. Vance's wife is, I think, a lawyer from a graduate of an Indian descent. I think has a law degree, and Kamala has an Indian background. We see all the CEOs and the CFOs of many companies of an Indian descent. So I see that that movement can helpfully bring about energy to bring um, is a resolution to this gridlock. There's enough, I think, of that going on that I have hope for Kumar, Amit, and the rest to have a enough of a um, power base to force a change in the system. Sandfax, we have heard from Sandfax many times with great questions. Hello, Sam. Please take a look at the pending I-45 data release of September 13th. We need to look at the Visa Bulletin in conjunction with this. It gives great insight. Please cover this in the next session. I will do that. I will do that. Um, Sandfax. Um, because I did not look at the September 13 release. Um, and the reason I didn't look at it is because every time we try to bring about an explanation between the numbers and the projections, um, things don't add up. But I will do it. I promise. Um, moving on to, and I don't know if I'm moving in the right direction. I think I know. I think I am. RK, based on the filing date in the Department of State, really think that EB3 and EB2 will only move 3 to 4 months for the year. Wow. Well, a little bit more than that, RK. Back to my number, they're thinking that the movement will be more like 5 months and 7 months, um, is what the expectation is as I read it. Yeah, but that's what we're looking at. The visa bulletin is misleading because they retrogress seems to have moved over a year for EB3 rest of the world, but not the case. It only moves 5 months since May 2023 when when the date was at June 17 a month ago. Um, what you're saying is we're looking only at the previous months, not the bigger picture. This was misleading because the retrogress seems to have moved over a year for EB3, the rest of the world, but not the case. It only moved 5 months since May 2003, when the date was June 17. Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying. Is it all depends on which reference point you're looking at. Um, but whatever reference point you are going to choose, you are going to have a different story. What I chose to look at is from last month, and the reason because I wanted to look at it is a simplistic look because I want to see what the dates are at the end of the year and what the dates are when there's 226,000 visas available for family based and 140,000 available for employment based. And of course, the spillover from family will not be available until next month or in the next 2 weeks. Whether these spillover numbers are available and not announced and included in this report, or whether the spillover, which is probably not the case because they really cannot use a number legally until the end of the fiscal year, which they will announce um, next month or in 2 weeks, perhaps. 3 to 4 months is for rest of the world. Noted. MG, do you expect EB1 India dates to progress in January? Do the current filing dates imply they'll move to April? Um, Also, do we know if family based or employment based spillover for the year? So I just addressed the family based to employment based spillover. I think we took a look at that about a couple sessions ago where we are predicting half of last year's spillover because of the embassies have done a good job. And I see positive movement in the employment based visa availability, which tell me they are issuing green cards. And therefore, I am skeptical there's going to be a significant spillover. Whether or not I expect in India forward movement is an interesting question because obviously there is plenty of EB1 rest of the world that are unused and will go to the India EB1. The question becomes, is there a significant number? And this is our friend was saying, take a look at the published number of September 13. It may shed some light on certain information, whether or not the EB1 approvals has been so high recently, such that it's moving a lot of people from EB2 with older priority date to India EB1 and not allowing that forward movement to occur. But that is the only reason I would speculate that EB1 will not move up is because a lot of EB2 with older priority date are getting approved for EB1 and therefore are just grabbing these available flow across visas from rest of the world EB1, preventing a forward movement. But that's just a speculation or an explanation. I'm trying to figure out why there is not an aggressive forward movement that they've given us. Empire. Um, Changing it completely. And the question is, can you change from pending H4 to B2? Uh, H4 pending for 4 months. Spouse will be laid off in couple months and planning to switch to EB to B2 while continuing job search. Is it possible to switch from H4 to pending H4 to B2. So here what we have is a situation where I have an H4 extension pending. I'm assuming that my current H4 status has expired and I filed a timely H4, and now my spouse is getting laid off. I'm saying, boy, my H4 extension is not going to be approved because there is going to be a layoff. Can I file a pending H4 to a pending B2? And the answer is yes. Well, number one, you have no option. You got to do it. So yes, I would file an H4, a pending H4 to a pending B2 with a letter of explanation, cross-referencing the H4, explaining that you're at fear of the spouse losing their H1B due to a layoff, and therefore you would ask that they adjudicate the H4 up to the B2 filing date and then adjudicate the B2 for the remaining period. And they should honor that. This administration has a tendency to honor common sense requests like this. Yes, the answer to that question. And that's a good question. EB2 2012 priority date has 4,276 pending applications. EB2 2013 priority date has 11,564 pending. EB3 2012 has 2,205 pending. EB3 2013 has 5,000 pending 45. This essentially shows how long it's going to take for India um, um, to obviously go through these numbers. How what's going to take. Now, remember, I'll be interested to see whether these numbers include family members. Um, so if they're talking about is when they're saying pending is these adjustments, and are these family members for the adjustment. So and then you will take that and compare it to the available number of visas, and you do the division, the math on availability. But of course, you have to assume every 2.5 approximately available green card in the pipeline goes to one family. So you have to make that adjustment. And obviously, um, then you have some of the unknowns, which is basically the transfer of underlying bases and people who are with dual filings and dual adjustments, etc. And that's why sometimes these numbers, you would think they're straightforward, but they're not straightforward. And one assumption can completely change the projection. But these are good information from Sand Facts. I appreciate sharing it with us. Empire. How can he overcome the immigration intent with approved I-140 to change from H1 to B2 visa to continue looking for a new job, employment, no assets or properties to ask or stay to sell? So to explain the question to everybody, a B2 is a non-immigrant visa. The non-immigrant visa would requires a non-immigrant intent, and filing an I-140 petition shows an immigrant intent. And the question becomes, how can you get a B2 approved if you have a pending I-140? Well, you can, because USCIS told us they will. The government owns the key. They own the key. And this administration have indicated willingness to help H-1B workers to switch to a B2 to be able to stay in the U.S. and look for a job longer than the 60-day grace period. And because they have the key, they will approve those cases, as we have seen. Now, magically, they can come back and not do that. Absolutely. You cannot overcome the immigrant intent with the I-140 approval um, necessarily, unless the employer withdrew the I-140 beyond 180 days, and you're able to continue your H-1B beyond 6 years. But but there's no really an immigrant intent necessarily. The other argument is that, which is obviously this is lawyering more so than anything else, and um, it's the short term versus the long term intent. Whereas your short term is to be on the B2 visa and respect the non immigrant requirement of the B2 visa. Um, and during that time, you will do that. Once you're back on the H1B, you'll pursue um, an immigrant intent within the H1B. And then lastly, push come to shove, if you have a labor certification approved, if you have a labor certification approved and you're working for the same I-140 employer, assuming you do not have an I-485, do you know that you can withdraw the I-140 and refile it later? Are you aware that you can do that without impacting your priority date? It is not what I recommend. I'm just giving a very broad answer to a very broad question. But ultimately, the answer to the question is you overcome it because they are not looking at it and they are not planning on looking at it right now, and that's their attitude. And that's where we stand. I got a question from Wesley. Hi, Sam. None of the candidates are talking about legal immigration, and their website does not cover it as well. Is legal immigration plight always going to be this way? Well, until and unless the next Elon Musk goes to another country and start the biggest next company on earth and remind the Americans that I wanted to get a green card, but your screwed up system prevented me, so I went somewhere else and I started my company, started my business. Unless there is a serious crisis like Y2K, as I have mentioned at the beginning, where they have a huge fear of AI robots coming down and taking our way of life. And we need IT workers and programmers and security professionals and cybersecurity and AI engineers to fight them. No, they're not going to look at it, unfortunately. Miss Imani, my priority is 2023 in February. Other workers category, I-140 filed in 2024. When will I get my embassy appointment date? Kindly. So Ms. Imani has an other worker 2023. Other workers are allocated 10,000 green cards per year. The dates for filing is when you get the embassy. The embassy appointment is final action date. And right now, it's 2020, December 1st, 2020. With no forward movement this year in the final action date and about 4 months of forward movement in the dates for filing. So they think that this category will crawl 3 or 4 months per year. That is a very unfavorable look. How are we going to move from December 2020, so 2021 to 2023? That can be a few years from now, based on the data we have now on this snapshot. This is just a snapshot. But as Sanfax has said, look at the visa availability number released in September 13. We may have a better look. So that's something that we can probably look at and discuss later. But right now, I don't see a potential for an aggressive forward movement for um, other workers rest of the world, because there was zero movement from September to October with the release of the visa bulletin, and only 134-day projection for the year forward movement. So I am not as optimistic that This is going to be in the foreseeable 1 year or 2 years, unfortunately, Miss Imani. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you get it quicker. At the hour at 7 o'clock, I'm going to take two more questions and then we'll call it a day. Disappointing for XYZ, off by 10 days. Um the DOF didn't move for 1 year from February 1st, only to move it by only 1 month. They could at least provide some commentary to explain if there's any change of movement. Um, yes, I agree. But one of my partners believe that these Visa bulletin numbers is not. It's 20% calculation, 80% attitude and policy. That if they want to move these dates forward, they'll move these dates forward. They'll find a way to move these dates forward, especially the dates for filing. For crying out loud, the dates for filing is 100% arbitrary. Take a few more years. Take a few more years. Put people in an adjustment. Get them EAD. Get them 5 years EAD. Let them go run their own companies and get their kids in school and start to feel a little bit more secure. The date for filing is absolutely arbitrary. It has absolutely no regulatory mandate in how forward can you move the dates for filing, and they have chosen to move it very conservatively and move back China by 228 days and um, move very conservatively forward for the year. That's not a significant movement. 219 days. Why not? Why not 2 years? There's no law that says you cannot do that. Why not take 2 years worth of adjustments? But they don't, and there's no explanation to that. Just like how they may say retrogress is coming in the summer, they can also say if movement is possible or not based on the current data they have. Well, my friend Empire, if they say that, then they're committing to not changing their mind. And if they're committing to not changing your mind, um, that is, too much for them to do sometime. My L1 is expiring in November of 2024. I have a Canada visitor visa. I'm planning to travel to Canada for this fall. I have an I-765 extended until December 25th. 1. I don't know what 1 means. Is it safe to travel to Canada when visa due to expire in a few days? Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if you have 2 days left on your visa expiration, you can come back to the U.S. The only thing that would be of a concern is if there's a delay in travel, um, you know, unexpected delay, and then you cross that date and you're stuck. But you can come back and then you file your extension without a problem. Um, with that, guys, we hit the hour. I hope I was able to give you some information, some of my opinion, without Brian interrupting me and asking and coming out with very intelligent and smart input. If Brian is listening, I suspect he probably cannot stay away from watching this. Just a guess. Um, he will be back next week. Until then, you guys have a fantastic rest of the day.